Hey, Pretty Girl Club, welcome back to the Privilege Stacking series. And today I'm going to talk about how to figure out what your internalized beauty standard is. So, a lot of you guys love when I talk about internalized beauty standards. The exotical space is the first space to actually psychoanalyze and help women to dissect what their beauty standards are and where they come from. So, one way that you can figure out what your internal beauty standard is, I want you to think of someone that you consider to be prettier than you. Okay, it could be a celebrity, it could be your sister, it could be somebody from high school. Let's name a celebrity, for example, Lupita Nyong'o. Let's say you think that she's prettier than you. Okay, why? What about Lupita Nyong'o is prettier than you? Eyes, nose, lips, skin tone, hair texture, what is it? If you think Beyonce is prettier than you, what exact features on Beyonce are prettier than yours? So, what you can do is just think about how you compare yourself to others. What features do you focus on? Because have you ever noticed that some people, they'll say, you're not an exotical because you're just a regular black woman. Okay, what they're saying is that regular black women don't meet their internalized beauty standard. They're saying that non-blackness is actually their internal beauty standard. Or they'll say stuff like, oh, well, you have a big nose, you have big lips, or you just look regular because of your broad facial features. Okay, so that means their beauty standard is keen features. I've noticed a lot of people, especially in the black community, their beauty standard is dark skin with keen features. So basically a darker skin mixed race woman. But one of the main ways you can tell what your internal beauty standard is just think back to the women that you've compared yourself to. So whenever you compare yourself, do you focus on skin tone? Like, what exactly are you comparing about physical appearance? Do you focus on skin tone? Do you focus on body type? Do you focus on bone structure? If so, what is your preferred bone structure? Do you prefer broad features or do you prefer keen features? So, whenever you're starting to think of someone being prettier than you, or maybe you've been threatened by people in the past, it doesn't have to be something that happened recently, but I just want you to think back to like middle school, childhood, women that you used to watch in the media. Why did you think they were prettier than you? It was because of what features? Okay, so that's one way that you can tell what your internalized beauty standard is. And then once you determine that, then you can ask yourself, okay, so clearly my internalized beauty standard is Beyonce, which is light skin with blonde hair and broader facial features and an hourglass body shape. Okay, so now that I've described what my internalized beauty standard is, do I want to look like that? And there is no wrong answer. So that's the controversial part of this channel. I don't believe that there's actually a right and wrong way to be beautiful. So if you choose to meet your internal beauty standard, you can. Or if you choose to give it up, then you can as well. But I will say that I don't think giving up on your internal beauty standard, I don't think that's going to help your confidence. Because I've just never heard of a woman who is super confident and then she thinks that she's ugly. I mean, I've personally never heard of it, especially in our society that is so focused on aesthetics and stuff like that. So I don't know. I can't imagine looking in the mirror, thinking that I look like an ogre, and then suddenly I'm just super confident and I feel so great about myself. No. And that's another thing too. You want to have multiple sources of micro validation. And the reason I talk about beauty is because when you go out of your way to meet your own internalized beauty standard, that's actually a way of validating yourself because you're telling yourself, hey, my beauty standard is to be slim thick, so I'm going to lose this weight. And then you go after your goal and you achieve it. That is actually something that contributes to your self-esteem. So that's why I'm talking about this. But another thing that you can do to determine what your internal beauty standard is, you can think about what triggers you. So, what situations or environments make you feel self-conscious about your appearance? Is it social media? Because if so, that means you have a social media beauty standard. Is it when you're on dates that you feel self-conscious? Okay, that means the male gaze is your internalized beauty standard. Is it when you're at the gym? Because if so, then that means that the fitness version of beauty or kind of having a fit body, that is a part of your internalized beauty standard. Do you ever feel pressured about your beauty? Because whatever environments cause you to feel pressure, that means that that environment is a part of your internal beauty standard. So for example, work, being in an office, that means that part of your internalized beauty standard is kind of that elegant beauty, kind of that professional looking beauty, you know, kind of like a boss babe. I'm thinking of like Olivia Pope. I'm thinking of the women that wear those elegant suits and stuff. That means that that's a part of your internalized beauty standard because whenever you get into that environment, you're feeling pressured like, oh crap, you know, I'm not beautiful enough. or I didn't do enough to meet my internal beauty standard. Oh, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with prioritizing your beauty. I have a psychological theory that most women actually do prioritize beauty, whether they admit it or not. And I think it's because your appearance literally can change your life. The way that you look in this society, our society is so messed up to the point where being beautiful literally can change how you're treated. It can change your opportunities. There are a lot of articles that talk about how women who are perceived as attractive, they have a lot more options in terms of finances and resources because you can get those resources from a boyfriend. You can get those resources from modeling, from acting, from social media, from ex work, from being a waitress. You know, a lot of waitresses and bartenders and baristas who are attractive, even they get higher tips and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with prioritizing beauty, but that's one of the ways that you know what your internalized beauty standard is. You can identify your triggers. Do you feel triggered when you go on a walk at the beach and you see a lot of women with their bikinis on? Or maybe you're at the park and you see a lot of women hiking, they have their cute little fitness sets on. That means that that is a part of your internalized beauty standard. Having a nice body with a cute fitness set, or having a beach body, being able to be confident at the pool, having that aesthetic where you look pretty when you go to the pool. You don't look like somebody that's creepy and like sloppy when you go to the pool. So that's another way that you can pinpoint what your internalized beauty standard is. Something else that you can think about is tracking your beauty routines. Whatever your beauty routines are, that tells me what's important to you in terms of beauty. What kind of beauty products or routines do you invest in the most and why? Is it your hair? Okay, then that means that long, healthy hair, that's a part of your internalized beauty standard. Is it your skin? Is it your makeup? Because a lot of the choices you make for your beauty routines, that points to whatever your priorities are. So if it's makeup, that means that you desire to have kind of this Slade makeup look. Are you one of those girls who gets all the new eyeshadow palettes and you really like doing the smoky eye and stuff? Okay, so that means that maybe kind of that baddie aesthetic or the vixen aesthetic or a little bit of a sultry aesthetic, kind of like Jessica Rabbit, that sort of aesthetic is a part of your internalized beauty standard. Number 5 is to reflect on your cultural and family influences. Did your mom or dad ever comment on other people's beauty? Because, you know, your parents do influence you, or maybe your older sisters or older brothers. Did they ever comment on other people's beauty and say, oh, so-and-so actress is so pretty, or, you know, your friend at school, she's really pretty. Did they ever comment on that? Because that influenced your internal beauty standard. I was actually thinking about this morning, and I actually cannot name one person that my parents ever called beautiful in front of me. So isn't that interesting? Like, I think that a part of the reason why I never had a lot of inferiority complexes was because my mom and dad, like, they never pointed out certain skin tones or people on TV like, oh, so and so is really pretty and then this other person is ugly. They never really made comments like that. And so I never really had a standard of what's pretty and what's ugly. I would say that more so when I went to school, that was when people would kind of talk about beauty standards. So you can start thinking about stuff like that. When you were a child, what was considered pretty? Were you considered the pretty girl? Were you considered the beauty standard when you were in school? Or was it someone else? You know, did you end up comparing yourself to a certain celebrity or something like that? That is a part of your internal beauty standard. And by the way, your internal beauty standard will always be influenced by your external environment. So I'm just trying to help you to pinpoint whatever the influences are of your beauty standard. Another thing you can think about too is when you were a little girl, you know how you used to watch Disney movies and stuff, and then like your friends would say, oh, I'm gonna be Raven. Like, okay, so whenever I used to watch the Cheetah Girls, I always wanted to be Raven. I was like, I'm Raven. So that's actually another thing that can pinpoint your beauty standard. Who did you want to be when you were watching movies? The reason I loved Raven was because Raven, she was a multiracial, light-skinned girl with the long, dark hair. You know, so she kind of, her character reminded me of myself, if that makes sense. So that's why I preferred Raven as opposed to like Aqua. And I know Aqua, all of the girls in Cheetah Girls are very pretty. But I'm just saying, like, is there anyone on TV that you really liked? I also really loved Sister Sister, obviously, because, again, they kind of reminded me of myself. So looking back, I do feel like I had an internalized beauty standard that was kind of focused on myself. But for other people, it could be focused on something else, and that's okay too. There is no right or wrong way. You just want to know how to navigate it though. So number 6 is to analyze your media influences. So think about the images and the messages that you've seen in the media, in ads, or even online, like social media. Do you find yourself aspiring to look like certain celebrities or influencers? What physical traits do you admire about them or feel the pressure to emulate? So this could be currently like, do you feel pressure to emulate a big booty? Okay, so what big booty celebrity have you seen to where you started comparing yourself and you're like, okay, I want to look like that? And by the way, maybe I'll do an episode about comparison because there actually is a such thing as healthy comparison and unhealthy comparison. I feel like most people they only focus on the unhealthy part of it, but there is a such thing as setting a benchmark for yourself. So I'm just trying to help you to identify what your benchmarks are. I told you guys my benchmarks in terms of my body goals. It tends to be kind of that 90s to early 2000s aesthetic. So very, very slim. A modern version of that would be kind of like the K-pop body type, or kind of like just a very skinny body type. Think of like Tyla or like Willow Smith or like, I don't know, other people who are very thin. I've noticed that that is my internalized beauty standard for my own body. And by the way, there is no right and wrong internal beauty standard. So if somebody says you're a white supremacist because of your internal beauty standard, not only is that person an idiot, but they actually can't prove that. Unless you were to say that blackness is ugly, okay, then you can make the argument that the person is a white supremacist. But there's nothing wrong with having an internalized beauty standard as long as you're not actively putting down other people. Like, oh, I don't want to look like a dark-skinned black woman because they're ugly. Okay, yeah, that would be a form of racism. But if you're just saying within yourself, hey, I think this particular phenotype is very pretty, there's actually nothing wrong with that. Another way you can tell what your internalized beauty standard is to think of the ugliest person you've ever seen in your life. What is your standard for ugliness? What phenotype and what person just popped up in your mind? Think of the ugliest woman you can think of. The ugliest woman you've ever met, the ugliest woman you've ever seen on TV or online. That is your standard of ugly. So the opposite of that would be your standard of beauty. So if your standard of ugliness is a quote unquote regular black woman, okay, then that means that your standard of beauty would be the opposite of that. So it would be maybe a white woman or, some sort of non-black woman. Another thing that points to your internal beauty standard is to think of the exact cosmetic procedures and like products and services that you seek out. So for example, do you gravitate towards makeup as a whole? Hairstyles or hair treatments as a whole, maybe wigs as a whole, or do you gravitate towards certain clothing styles? Like if you only had $100 in your beauty budget, what would that $100 go towards? Would it go towards a wig? Okay, so that means that you heavily prioritize whatever hair texture that wig is. So if it's long, straight, a bust down appearance, type 2 or whatever, okay, that means your internal beauty standard is type 2 black hair. Something else that you can do too is to think about how much perfectionism is within your beauty standards. So are you one of those girls who likes effortless beauty? Do you like glamorous beauty? Do you like a seductive version of beauty? Because I notice I sometimes like a seductive version of beauty. So think of like red lipstick, kind of like plunging necklines, a low cut dress or something like that. So I want you to think of the actual vibe or the emotions that you want the person to feel when they are gazing upon your beauty. What emotion do you want people to feel when they look at you? Do you want them to look at you and say, oh, she's cute? Or do you want people to look at you and say, oh my God, she's stunning? Or wow, she's very sexy looking. So that's another thing that will help you determine your beauty standard. Maybe you want people to think you're sexy. Maybe you want people to think you are professional, like in the workplace. Maybe you want people to think you are natural and effortless, kind of, I woke up like this, those types of vibes. Maybe you want people to think you are athletic. You like the athletic beauty aesthetic. So something else that tells you your internal beauty standard is look at your sources of anxiety. If your skin tone causes you anxiety about your beauty, it means that your own skin tone is not a part of your internalized beauty standard. Okay? If your hair texture, your nose, whatever features about yourself cause you anxiety, it means that those things are not a part of your internalized beauty standard. So that's not good or bad. You just have to decide like, okay, what do I want to do about this? Do I want to do anything about this? Do I want to change this particular thing? Or do I want to just keep it as it is and just accept that my nose is ugly or I feel like my nose is ugly? So there is no right or wrong answer, but I'm just saying that, there are going to be aspects of your beauty that may cause you anxiety. So if your nose is causing you anxiety, like you don't measure up, it's because you think your nose is ugly. Okay, you think your nose is ugly, maybe you think your skin tone's ugly or your hair texture. So I'm letting you know that that's because it does not meet your internal beauty standard. If you're comparing yourself to celebrities and then you focus on, okay, how keen are their features? I've noticed a lot of people in the Black community, their beauty standard for facial features is keen features. They prefer, and when I say keen features, I'm talking about Alicia Keys' facial features, Christina Milian, Justine Skye. All of those women have keener features. And when I say that, I'm talking about narrow noses. I'm talking about narrow jaw lines. So kind of that V-shaped jawline, not like a wide square jawline, but the V-shaped one, the smaller one. I've also noticed that Black women prefer short philtrums. So your philtrum is the distance between your nose and lips. I've noticed that if you have a long space between your nose and lips, Black women will call you ugly. Tiny, T.I.'s wife, she has a long philtrum. I noticed that she tried to fix it with getting lip fillers. But a lot of Black women, they actually call other Black women or mixed women ugly when they have that long philtrum because they seem to associate it with monkeys. Whoopi Goldberg is another example of a woman who has a long philtrum. Why did they say Whoopi Goldberg was so ugly? Well, it's because she had a combination of Black features with a long philtrum. That's why. So I was thinking of doing a whole video. Maybe I'll do an entire video on philtrum length because I really feel like that is actually what the internal bias is. I've never seen anybody else on YouTube talk about the Black community's subconscious obsession with the length of your philtrum. If you have a long distance between your nose and lips and then your upper lip is flat, I've noticed a lot of people, they will try to say that like, oh, that person looks like a monkey or she's ugly or something like that. So having thin lips, I noticed that that's something that a lot of Black women don't like either. And they'll call a woman ugly because she has thin lips and a bigger nose. So you want to look at what your standard of being ugly is. And then whatever the opposite of that is, that would be your beauty standard. Something else that you can do to pinpoint your beauty standard, I've already talked about this before, but look at how you dress and how you try to look on special occasions, on your birthday, on your wedding day, whenever it's a special occasion, on your vacation. How are you trying to look? Because that's your internal beauty standard. If you put on a wavy wig during your wedding day or a vacation, okay, that's your beauty standard then. It's wavy black hair. If you try to lose weight before your vacation, that's your beauty standard. It's having a fit body. If you put on the birthday makeup, kind of that vampy, the cut crease eyeshadow and smoky eye with the lipstick and the lashes, that is your beauty standard. It's having that vampy, kind of sexy, heavy makeup, almost like a Hollywood glamorous look. You like the glamorous beauty. That's your beauty standard. Number 10 is to reflect on your social media usage. What accounts do you follow the most and engage with the most? Do you guys remember how a lot of women, they tried to say that women with type 3 hair took over the natural hair movement? No, it's because the women with type 3 hair, they met more of the beauty standards of the women who were the subscribers. And that's why they engaged with them. So the social media accounts you engage with or the beauty Instagram accounts and stuff that you engage with, that is your beauty standard. Because you're not going to follow someone who's going to teach you how to look as ugly as possible. No, like if you're looking for hairstyles and stuff, you're going to naturally gravitate towards the people who have the pretty hair, in your opinion. So whatever hairstyle you think looks pretty, you're more likely to click on that video. If you think the makeup looks pretty in the thumbnail, you're more likely to click on that. So that's another way that you know your beauty standards. So look at some of the people you follow on Instagram and YouTube because that will tell you what your beauty standard is. Another thing that you can examine is examine your relationship with flaws. What do you consider to be a flaw? So do you view things like cellulite, wrinkles, or body hair as flaws that need to be hidden or corrected? Like dark spots, you view that as something that needs to be corrected. This darkness in your skin or, this wrinkle on your eye. Because your internalized beauty standard is really directing what you consider to be a flaw. Like, for example, who told you that cellulite and stretch marks are a flaw? And there is no wrong answer. I mean, I personally consider cellulite and stretch marks to be a flaw myself, but I can tell you where that comes from. It comes from Hollywood, porn, and the male gaze. Okay? So I have no problem being open, honest, and transparent with a part of where my internalized beauty standards came from. I know that when it comes to being seductive, that's a part of my beauty standard is being seductive. And so I don't associate cellulite and stretch marks with being seductive. So I'm able to admit to myself what I consider to be flaws and why I consider them to be flaws. That's very important. It's very important to have that level of self awareness because you don't want to have cognitive dissonance. If you think something is a flaw, but then you can't describe why it's a flaw or where it came from or who you're trying to impress, etc., then you're going to be walking around with cognitive dissonance and you're actually going to have a lot of anxiety about your own beauty. Have you ever noticed that some women, they have this volatile relationship with their own beauty? So one day they feel beautiful, the next day they don't. When they're around this group of people, they feel pretty, but then when they're around that group of people, they don't feel pretty. Why is that? It's because they do not have a solid, stable, psychologically sound beauty standard for themselves. They have not sat down and journaled or really reflected on what their beauty standards are and why. And so their environment, they basically have an external locus of control in terms of beauty standards. So whatever influences are around them suddenly is going to change their beauty standard. And by the way, I would say that if you have a volatile relationship with beauty, you may have a fluid beauty standard, meaning that like you want to be able to wear blonde hair one day and then black hair the next day, and then be professional one day, and then be ratchet the next day, and then look like a video vixen. So you might have this fluid beauty standard, but you haven't admitted that to yourself yet, and you have not allowed yourself the freedom to have a multifaceted beauty identity. So for some people, they have a signature look for their beauty standard, like a natural beauty or glamorous beauty. You know, they're always going to look glamorous. And then for the women who have kind of this multifaceted beauty, I will say that is the hardest beauty standard to meet. And those are the types of women that you do see getting a facelift when they get older, or they get like a boob job or something, or, you know, they end up getting these cosmetic procedures done. So in the Black community, I will say they have a very bad relationship with cosmetic procedures. And I think part of that is because they don't want to admit that they are participating in, you know, meeting the beauty standard. They just don't want to admit that because they feel like it's a betrayal to their Blackness. So that's another thing. Maybe Blackness or whatever's trending in the Black community, that's your beauty standard. So if dark skin is popular in the Black community, that's your beauty standard. If light skin is popular in the Black community, suddenly that's your beauty standard. If locks are popular in the Black community, that's your beauty standard. So for some women, they have like this ethnic-centered beauty standard for themselves. Number 12 is to reflect on compliments and validation. How do you feel when people compliment your looks? What is your favorite physical feature to be complimented on? What is something where, you know, you would love it if you got complimented on that particular thing? Is it your skin complexion that you want compliments on? Is it your hair? Is it your makeup? Is it your fashion? So think about what your favorite compliments are on your physical appearance. That means that that particular feature is important to you. Do you like when people compliment your complexion? Okay, so then your chocolate skin tone, that is a priority in your internalized beauty standard. If you feel good only when you are praised for certain traits, that means that you value those traits more than others. So for example, maybe you prefer to be complimented on your nose versus being complimented on your lips. So that means that having a certain nose is more important to your beauty standard versus the lip size. I've noticed that noses are actually a very big part of most people's beauty standard because, you know, the nose is like right in the middle of your face. Another thing you can think about, number 13, is to consider your self-worth. How connected is your sense of self-worth to your appearance? If you feel more confident or worthy when you meet certain beauty standards, like having a certain body size or something, that suggests that your internalized beauty standard is tied to how you value yourself. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with that. I myself am one of those people, and I stand 10 toes down on it and will never apologize for it because society is shallow. So if people say that I'm shallow for valuing my beauty, it's like, okay, the society I live in is shallow. So if all it takes is a little bit of red lipstick or some high heels for me to not have to pay for drinks at the bar, not have to pay for a coffee, not have to pay to get my car washed. Like I recently got a free car wash. I got free waxing on my car. So if something as simple as a cute outfit and some lipstick causes the doors to be open to where I am literally saving money, then yes, I am going to tie that to my sense of self because my sense of self is tied to the soft life. So for me personally, beauty, not only is it a form of self care, but it's also a means to an end for me because it gives me closer proximity to the soft life. It gives me closer access to the soft life, and I enjoy the social power that comes with beauty. Number 14 is to explore your mindset on aging. So, how do you feel about getting older? How do you feel about looking older? Do you want to look older or do you dread looking older? So, do you buy anti aging products? Because if so, that means that youth or having a youthful appearance is a part of your internalized beauty standard. Do you want to look like you're 80 years old? Do you want to look like you're 50 years old? If not, it's because you prioritize youth. You enjoy youthful beauty, or that's a part of your internalized beauty standard. I think I'm on number 15. I want you to reflect on your sexual attractions. So, how do you perceive attractiveness in others? So, particularly in your romantic partners, what emphasis do you place on their physical appearance? Do you like a man that looks fit? If so, that means that fitness is a part of your internalized beauty standard. Do you like a man with light skin? For example, you like white men, you like non black men, you think that they're attractive? Okay, light skin is a part of your internal beauty standard. Do you like men that have silky hair textures? So maybe he's white, maybe he's Indian, maybe he's biracial or something. Okay, that means those hair textures are a part of your internal beauty standard. Whatever you're attracted to in the opposite sex is a part of your internal beauty standard. If you like tall men, being tall, having long legs, or looking tall and lean, that's a part of your internal beauty standard. I think I'm on number 16. Think about your fitness goals. So when you're working out, what body type are you trying to attain? That is your beauty standard in terms of bodies. So if you are trying to get a flat stomach, that means that that's your beauty standard for stomachs. It is a flat stomach or having a little six pack or, being skinny, having a snatched waist. Number 17, consider how you react to different body types. So if you see a plus size person or a person that has like a different body shape, how do you react? Do you feel like, oh, I don't want to look like that? What is your standard of ugly in terms of body types? Because that would mean that the opposite of that would be your standard of beauty. So if your standard of ugly for a body type is a refrigerator shape, then that means your standard of beauty is probably some sort of slim hourglass. Anyway, these are just a few of the ways that you can recognize your internalized beauty standard. Please let me know what else you guys want me to talk about in this area. I can talk about this for hours, and nobody else on YouTube is able to dive into this concept more than the exotical space. So that's another special thing that I love about the Pretty Girl Club. But let me know what questions you have in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.